All right, next up in the flyweight division, we got Osbourne coming in at plus 110, going up against Idiris, who comes in at minus 130. Starting off on the Osbourne side of things, he is now 1-4 in his last 5 fights, with that one win being that knockout victory over Louis Garul. That was a fight where he was down in the first round after being outworked, but luckily he was able to capitalize on a lazy kick from Garul, drop him, and get the TKO finish. He nearly finished Ronaldo Rodriguez at Noche UFC back in September of 2024 when he nearly finished Rodriguez in the first round, but then Rodriguez rallied back in round 2 and 3 to end up getting the win there. We often see Osbourne struggle in the grappling room. That's where guys have had the best success against him, whether it's Asu Al-Mabayev submitting him, Jafel Filho submitting him, or even Steve Erceg digging deep in the, I believe, third round to get the fight to the ground, second and third round actually, to get Osbourne to the ground and grind him out and win the fight that way. Second round, I think Erceg outpointed him in the striking room. Third round, I believe it was when Erceg actually started to use his grappling. In the first round, Osbourne hurt Erceg, nearly finished him, maybe left a little bit too much in that first round with expending the energy that he did. But that's kind of been the issue in Osbourne's game. You know, he's long, he's athletic for this flyweight division, he has power, he's fast, but that seems to start to fall off after that second round, after the halfway point of the fight, and that's where opponents are usually able to get ahead of him or eventually get him out of there in the second or third rounds. I think it's his athleticism has largely been the reason for his success and why he's still in the UFC after this long. But I still think, you have to give respect to that finishing power, to his frame, to his speed. And that's what Louis Garul unfortunately found out. He's a guy that I often look to fade, whether it's with a lock of the night play like I did with Ronaldo Rodriguez. I think I had Louis Garul as a lock of the night against him as well. But you have to respect the power that he brings, which is why sometimes he might be able to spring an upset. I will say this. With him being plus 110 here, he was plus 130 late last week. So a lot of obviously some love coming in on him here. I think a lot of that had to do with him hurting Steve Erceg in the first round of that fight. But then we see the usual Osbourne falling off in the second and third rounds. And that's where I think a lot of people are overlooking and why they're probably betting him as an underdog here. But we'll talk more about the betting aspect of this fight after I get through Idiris's side of things here now. So Libby suffered his first pro loss, which was an Ultimate Fighter finale where he took on Joseph Morales, and Morales showed him no respect. Idiris is normally a guy that does a great job in terms of dictating the pace, landing his combinations, getting to the wrestling whenever he needs to, but Morales was the one that was in the driver's seat of that fight. He was the one pushing Idiris back, keeping him uncomfortable, eventually landing some takedowns. Even if Idiris was the one landing takedowns, Morales reversed it almost immediately or eventually worked back to his feet and then got back on that gas. And then halfway through that second round, we saw Idiris really starting to slow down, starting to give up those positions a little bit more, and then eventually led to Morales getting the submission win. I think that leaves a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths for Idiris in terms of being like, oh, this guy's not that good. He probably shouldn't have been a big favorite against Morales. But I think we're constantly overlooking what Morales brings to the table. He is a guy that's historically been underrated throughout his career, and I think that kind of poured into the Idiris fight. But I think we'll really see what Idiris is made of this weekend. He was undefeated. He won a prominent title over there in Asia under Niza FC, fought some pretty tough competition, finished most of those guys as well. So I really had some high hopes for him when he made it to the UFC. Although he fell short in the Ultimate Fighter, he still has an opportunity to prove himself here now that he's fighting, just as an official UFC bout. Mixed in the fact that he probably had some UFC jitters fighting on a pay-per-view card against Joseph Morales. Now that he's kind of shook that off, now that he can possibly get back to his game, this fight against Osbourne could be very intriguing. Now, if Morales just won by decision and we saw Idiris not have a cardio dump, I think we would see Idiris closer to minus 200 here. You also mix in the fact of Osbourne outperforming the plus 400 price tag that he had against Steve Erceg. maybe we see this line a little bit wider too. So I think it's a combination of things here that is making this line a lot closer than I think it should be. I don't think Osbourne is going to push as much of a pace as Morales did. I think he'll try to be in Idiris's face. I think he'll try to, poke at him, try to land his big shots early. But the more that he pushes, the worse it's going to be on his gas tank. And I think Idiris will have a better gas tank, and he'll actually be able to rely on his wrestling here, land a few takedowns, or even push Osbourne against the cage and try to suck a little bit of wind there. So I think Idiris won't show as bad of a gas tank as he did last time around against Morales. I think his durability is already top-notch. I think he's the better grappler. I think he's the better wrestler. I think, technically speaking, he's probably the superior striker. Obviously, finishing, I would give the edge to Osbourne. Obviously, big power in his punches. We have to respect that. But if Idiris can get through that first round without getting clipped and continue to stick with his striking defense and get to his grappling in the second and third rounds, I expect him to dominate Osbourne here. And I think this minus 130 line ends up looking like a steal. Again, he was minus 150 just a few days ago. Now that he's down at minus 130, it's clear that there is Osbourne love coming in, but I think that love is a little bit misguided, and I think Idiris will remind us why. So once again, I'm going to go Idiris and Idiris by decision.